it's just crazy for me because I lived through 2021 and knew how hyped up everything felt. And it wasn't as crazy, like if you look like what's happening now with like presidents talking about it, institutions talking about like it seems like there's so much going on. And it's like, who said it? I think Nico from Simple Bitcoin said it once. It's the best cycle for news for Bitcoin, and it's the worst cycle for price.
No, 100%. And again, like, people just find that stuff boring, oh, well, BlackRock said this about Bitcoin. It's like, who is that? I don't know what that is. A bunch of people just don't, you know what I mean? In order to get the newbies in on this, what we need like Taylor Swift. Taylor Swift shows a Bitcoin purse. Now all of a sudden price action 1 million, all of a sudden. So I don't know, man. I don't know.
I agree. We need Taylor Swift. I think we had, was it Katy Perry last time, or no, Paris Hilton? Like it's like people with like the Bitcoin classes, which were popular, I think, last time. One other thing that I want to touch on you, touch with you on, is knots versus core. I'm not sure how deep you're into that. It's just for me as a commentator, super interesting how emotional the whole debate is. So I want to make sure to touch on it and maybe take a take on it in because you touched before on like rogue developers and like having kind of discussions within the community. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah. And some people in my comment section saying you need to make a video about this, and just being honest, I know I'm not very technically versed. So it's really hard for me to speak on this, because I don't want to we dunk on people a lot in the Bitcoin network, and we need to keep doing that. But usually when you say something really stupid, it's because you're talking about something that you don't know anything about. And then someone else who's a little bit smarter than you is going to dunk on you either immediately or later down the road. But with that being said, I do like to witness the commentary. I like to read as much as I can, especially on X, of people going back and forth. And as I currently understand it, it's just not a good look for the core developers. It's not a good look. Maybe technically they are correct about certain things, but first off, the look that they're showing is just not good, right? It's this authoritarian fiat style, trust me, bro. You're not supposed to be making these decisions on your own. It's up to me to do the work for you. I need to hold your hand because you don't know what you're doing. You're stupid. And even if you do disagree and you want us to explain it, we're not going to. We're just going to go ahead and do it. Right? That's not a good look. The second thing is that at the end of the day, right, some people are just saying, well, the filters don't work. The filters don't work. The filters suck. I mean, just leave them there. Like what's the problem with them just staying? Right. There's just all these different issues where, again, we don't want to change Bitcoin. It's very rare that we ever do any sort of change to Bitcoin. And it just doesn't make sense to me. A lot of it doesn't make sense. A lot of the back and forth that I read, they end up just not making sense. And it's not even from a technical standpoint. Of course, technically, some of the stuff does not make sense to me because I literally don't get it. But just from like a virtue standpoint, from a, I guess, extrapolating out as an attack vector, right? It's just not a good look. So I've been running knots on my computer for a long time because Core didn't work for me. I tried downloading like Core 26 or something like that. It didn't work for me. And I just downloaded knots, right? And then after seeing all this different stuff, I set my filters a certain way, just because, I don't want to be relaying the spam. I want to try to stop spam as best I can. So some people will watch this and they say, well, the spam filters don't actually work. You're not stopping anything. Well, I mean, what are we going to do? We got to at least try. So I think one way to try to put it would be, in school, they try putting filters on computers. So that way you're not like kids, like, elementary school kids aren't looking at certain things. They're not on websites they shouldn't be on, or they're not goofing off in school. The filters are very minimal, right? They're pretty easy to circumvent. So you could say that the filters don't actually work, but it's the whole point of trying, right? Well, we don't want to just have all the bad websites as easily available as you can make them, right? We don't want kids just playing Minecraft all day on the computer. We want to try to at least block it in some way. We want to at least try, you're at least trying. It seems like the opposite of that is not trying at all. I feel like that's not the stance you should take, especially when, again, you're doing certain things that have already been done on Bitcoin Satoshi's vision. And then that turned out pretty bad, right? Opening up the op return limit to like the maximum so that people can put videos and all this other stuff. It just doesn't make sense to me. It just doesn't seem like something that should be done. And again, if the filters don't work at all, what's the harm in them staying? What's the harm in them staying? Yeah, they don't work. Okay, well, Bitcoin still works. Bitcoin still works. So I don't know. That's my whole thing. And when people ask that on Twitter and they go back and forth, it turns into like this crazy argument that ends up. And I'm not trying to be biased or anything, but from what I've seen, it ends up turning into most of the core guys. The core guys end up being really quiet on the other end when they get pushed back and challenged in these ways. But there's a lot of smart people on the core side, from what I can tell. I know that Pierre Richard was talking about something about this, and he seems like he's leaning more towards the side of core. And I've seen some of his arguments go back and forth with people. And again, he's a really thoughtful guy. Some of the things that he says make a lot of sense. And again, it's just hard. There's a lot of legends on both sides, a lot of Bitcoin OGs on both sides who are like battling it out right now. And at the end of the day, just got to think for yourself. Got to keep on learning. It's hard to make any decisions right now, but I'm leaning towards the knots side, I got to say. That's just me personally, just based on what I've seen.
I love that. And I'm just surprised by how emotional it is, because when I talk with people that are really technical into this, they say there's a lot of worse things that Core did way before op return, and op return shouldn't be that big of a deal. And it kind of shows also how far we're already in the Bitcoin story, where 5-6 years ago, we talked about consensus changes, where we talked about, we need to change the block size. Now we are talking about a policy change, which is a way smaller part, a way less critical part of Bitcoin. And it kind of just shows how Bitcoin matures also of like how it is working. And I think it's actually a positive thing. I'm already looking forward to what are we discussing in 5 years. what small thing will be like the major thing. But I probably think that it will be even smaller and even smaller nitty gritty thing than that we have right now. And I don't want to downplay the whole debate, but I think it's blown up more than it should have, just because of like emotional argumentations. But yeah, with that being said, we have one question that I asked each and every one of my returning guests, and you are already, I think, the third time now on the show, if I remember correctly. It's really, really fun to have you now the third time on the show. And the question is, what have you learned outside of Bitcoin since your last recording?
What I've learned outside of Bitcoin since the last recording is the importance of being the Bitcoin guy and just emphasizing Bitcoin as much as you can, like kind of taking that and running with it, right? And it doesn't have to just be the Bitcoin guy. It's just whatever your nature is, right? Whatever your personality is, whatever your passions are, you really have to accept that and then run with it, right? So there's just certain things that we know for a fact that we are good at, that we love doing, that we could do for free for the rest of our life, that we feel like we have to share with people. Those are the things that you need to really double down on, hone in on, understand about yourself, and then full send it, right? Really go for it as best you can. And me doing that has landed me in so many good positions, right? Being the Bitcoin guy, being the guy who's really into technology, has landed me in so many good positions, helped me close so many great deals. Again, Hut 8, multi-billion-dollar company, all because I called some people, talked about how I was an investor in their company, how I love Bitcoin, how I think that it's amazing that they're securing the network, and that I would love the opportunity just to work for them. Now I know like over 20 people who work for Hut 8, never met them in person, but I talked to them on the phone. I got their contact info. We go back and forth, and I move these multi-million-dollar shipments. And I wouldn't have been able to do that if I didn't double down on myself and double down on the Bitcoin network, the Bitcoin ideology, right? I have my little Bitcoin mouse pad at work. They literally know me as Mr. Bitcoin, right? Because people in the office didn't even know, well, you could do freight for Bitcoin. I thought it was digital, right? Then you show them what a mining rig looks like. Then you show them what an entire mining farm looks like. Then you told them about how mining infrastructure actually helps stabilize the grid and how it helps expand out clean energy usage, right? And then you are basically orange pilling people passively. You are passively orange pilling people by doubling down on who you are. And it doesn't have to be Bitcoin, like I said. If you really think yoga is the best thing in the world and everyone needs to be doing it, you need to double down as the yoga person. You need to subtly integrate yoga into all the stuff that you do, right? Whether that's wearing like a yoga hat or like a yoga shirt or something, or posting online talking about your yoga journey. Hey, I'm going to yoga again, right? Whatever it is, you need to really integrate that into your everyday and then keep going. And then once you keep going, I mean, your life's just going to be a lot more fruitful. Your ability to enjoy your life will just be a lot better. So that's what I would say. I would just say, figure out what your nature is and then follow that, right? Some people's nature, you're an entrepreneur, you want to start your own business. Some people's nature is to be a seller, right? You can sell very well. Some people's nature is to be physical, right? You know what I mean? Whether that's being a bodybuilder, whether that's being a fitness instructor, whatever it is, their nature is to be an educator, right? So find your nature and then fully chase it as hard as you can. And then all the riches, all of the fame, all the glory, all of the happiness will follow from that.
This is a freaking awesome advice. So thank you so much for that. I hope so. Maybe one or two people get some inspiration from that, because I think it's a very nice thing. Yeah, we have an end routine also, as you know, where the previous guest is asking a question for the next guest without knowing who the next guest actually is. And the previous guest asked you the question: do you think Ecash, so like Cashew on Fedimint, will be the banking layer of Bitcoin?
Now, I have seen a little bit of Ecash usage. I know that they have a widget in Apple now. I think Ecash, you can just send Bitcoin directly to someone through text now by using Ecash. I could be wrong on that, but I saw a video of someone doing something similar in their iPhone text messaging. And again, Fedimints, I've heard about Fedimints as well, these different federations that you can make with other Bitcoins and Bitcoin nodes. So it's really hard for me to speak on this because, again, I'm just not as educated on the topic. But I think that if it's not Ecash, if it's not Cashew, if it's not Fedimints, if it's not Lightning, it'll be something else. It's something that no one has invented yet. Right. And that's what we talked about earlier. People cannot see what they can't imagine. I really cannot imagine a world where we're still using fiat banking rails 16 years from now. The difference will be that Bitcoin rails will be integrated into the fiat system if the fiat system is still around, right? Even fiat will be running on Lightning, right? Robinhood will be running on Lightning, all these different services that used to be 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, are now going to be 24/7, 365. And it was systems like Bitcoin that allowed that to be possible. We're already seeing that type of transition happen. So I think the monetary network, like the Bitcoin network, the banking network, is also going to become integrated. They're going to become intertwined in that way, right? Because there's going to be banks that are custodying your Bitcoin. There's going to be apps that are custodying your Bitcoin. There's going to be companies that are custodying your Bitcoin. It's going to be you custodying your Bitcoin, right? It's just going to be so many different options that are available, right? So I can't sit here and say, one thing I do know for sure, if we're being honest, one thing I know for sure is that it won't just be Fedimints. It will not just be Ecash. It won't just be Cashew. It won't just be Blockstream. It'll be so many different options, and there'll be options that we can't even think of right now, that we've never even thought of, that will be available to us as well. That's how the world's going to be. That's the way that we're going. I don't think it'll just be one singular thing that'll be like the new wave. The only thing that's like that is Bitcoin itself, right? But the way that we access Bitcoin, the way that we hold Bitcoin, the way that we use Bitcoin, the way that we send and receive Bitcoin, those things are going to have hundreds of options. There's going to be an insane amount of optionality because there's always going to be more entrepreneurs that want to build on this open source software. They want to provide services for people. They obviously want to get paid for these services that they're providing. And they also want to try to beat the other guy. They want to make a better thing than the other guy. They want to make a faster thing than the other guy. So that's where I think the future of like payments on Bitcoin, the future of payments with Bitcoin, I think that's where we're going.
Thank you for watching this video. This was only a snippet of the podcast. And if you want to watch the full episode and get all of the context of this episode, you can click right here or here. Oh, maybe also here.